on the Middle East, Al Monitor's weekly podcast on the big stories in our region. Today, we'll be talking about Turkey's long-running threats to launch another invasion against US-backed Kurdish forces in northeast Syria. Turkey has since 2016 been seizing and occupying large chunks of northern Syria to prevent the Syrian Kurds from establishing a de facto statelet, much as their Iraqi Kurdish brethren have in northern Iraq. Turkey's last invasion in October 2019 triggered a global outcry and resulted in US congressional sanctions on Turkey. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has vowed to create a 30-kilometer deep security belt to defend Turkey against what he calls terrorists. With us here today to discuss this situation is Salih Muslim, the co-chair of the Democratic Unity Party, which is running the autonomous administration in northeast Syria. Welcome to our show, Salih Bey. It's so great to have you here today, especially at this very critical time when Rojava is facing yet another attack by Turkey.
Yeah, thank you very much. Really, I am glad to be with you. And thank you for you and for Mr. Phil.
Okay, yes, we have to thank Phil, who always helps us record these programs. So, Mr. Muslim, I will start by asking you, what is your assessment of the meeting between President Erdogan and President Putin? Because, you know, when we spoke most recently, you said that Turkey cannot launch another military operation, certainly not in the areas under Russia's control, without at least an orange light from Putin. Did he get an orange light or any kind of light in this meeting?
Well, no, I don't think so. But we have to recognize that this meeting has came after Tehran meeting. I mean, just about 15 days or 16 days after Tehran. It means that they couldn't get the results they want from Tehran, and then they had to sit separately to discuss maybe something which is not convenience with the interest of Iran, you see. So it's a separate thing. But in spite of that, I don't think they could get the orange light or green light for attacks. But as we have heard, they wouldn't object those, this using drones and bombarding the places in the northeast of Syria, and so they wouldn't reject it. So, but the invasion, very wide invasion to those areas, I think is not possible this time because as we mentioned before, I mean, there is Iranian troops over there, or Iranian people, and also the Turkish troops, Syrian troops, Russians, and also maybe we have the local people, Kurdish resistance units. So everything will be very mixed if there is any attack on the ground. So maybe they will continue in this way. I mean, just by bombarding and so. But in spite of everything, we don't know really, because the president of Turkey really is clumsy. Maybe they can do something, unexpected. So we don't know really.
Well, he does keep saying that it will be unexpected, that we can come at any time. But why do you think Russia is so reluctant to let Turkey intervene when clearly Russia has a lot of expectations from Turkey, particularly since it invaded Ukraine? I mean, Turkey is one of the few NATO countries, perhaps the only one that's not joining in sanctions against Russia. Access through the Bosphorus is so critical, and now they just signed this deal to increase trade. So clearly, Turkey is very important to Vladimir Putin. Why is he resisting?
Well, I think because maybe they have some strategic accounts, like any invasion or any advance in Turkish troops to that area. It means maybe surrounding the Aleppo areas and so, and even members. Maybe at that time, M4 will be cut. So this is a huge thing for the Syrian regime. This is one. So they don't want to harm the regime and regime's interests in that area. So anyway, this is the only reason maybe Russian is resisting, not allowing them to do. And there is another thing, I mean, which is Iran. Iran also is in their account. They have to put it in account. And the main thing, they know how much our people over there, I mean, YPG and YPJ and Democratic Syrian Forces, also they are ready for fighting. I mean, they will resist, and this resistance, I mean, everybody should take it in account. I mean, there are not empty areas just to go. So they will resist, and their resistance maybe will change their accounts too.
Well, we also know that at the same time, Russia is in a dialogue with you. You have to work together, especially since Operation Peace Spring, when Turkey launched its last invasion. And some of those areas where you used to have US forces are now under Russian control. And we also know that Russia wants to somehow get you and Damascus to sit down and sign some kind of an agreement. And you have often described that as a capitulation, that that's what's being expected from you. How are those talks going? We saw an article today in Sharq al-Awsat suggesting that, there may be more cooperation now between the SDF and the regime. What is the status of those talks and of your relationship more broadly with Damascus?
Well, just shortly, what I can say, there is no discussions really. I mean, political discussions from our side or from the administration. All we have is discussion as a military base or for those armed forces in the frame of the agreement in 2019, a ceasefire which is guaranteed by the Russians. So, I mean, maybe the troops and those amount of the troops to be present in some places and so all discussions is about that, not more than that.
So basically there's no agreement with the regime. Can you just, for our audience, briefly outline what it is that the regime wants from you?
Well, the regime is, which is, we are repeating many times, they didn't change their mind. They still believe that they can take Syria back to before 2011, you see, without democracy, dictatorship, despotic regime, and controlling everything, which is, I mean, it was the cause of those people, I mean, Syrian people to uprise. I mean, for looking for the freedom, looking for democracy, and changing the regime. So they don't want to make anything. So the mentality is still the old mentality, and maybe because the mutual interest between them and the Russians, so they have to say okay to the regime. This is it. I mean, otherwise. The Russians, they know what we are looking for. I mean, we have some relations with the Russians since 2012, and they know our project, and they said, well, it's okay. We will try to persuade the regime to accept, I mean, a dialogue, but till now, there is no any advance on this stage, I mean, till now.
Well, you mentioned Iran as well, and that's not really been discussed very much. I haven't seen really anything about your relations, the autonomous administration's relations with Iran in Syria. What is the nature of that relationship?
Well, there is no relation really, because we don't have the Iranians in our areas. Maybe we have in some points like Kamishlo and Saka, we have some areas which the regime is located. Maybe some Iranians over there, but they never talk to us. They never meet us. There is nothing between us and them. I mean, directly. There is no contact.
So just to, to make sure that our audience understands, what do the Kurds of Syria want? What is their minimum demand going forward?
Well, we would like to have some human rights. That's all. I mean, the Kurdish people, they are a nation. They are in their place, historical place, since thousands of years, and they should be recognized as the people, as the human. And now we don't have till now. I mean, we cannot speak our language. We cannot teach our language. We are not free in the politicians and so. And everybody has gave up the Syrian to fight alone. I mean, against those Daesh, and they want to finish the Kurdish people in these areas. I mean, even Turkey or the Syrian regime, and we have defended ourselves and we protected ourselves till now. And of course, we will guarantee this. I mean, to have at least, I mean, our being in these areas. And we have our project, of course. I mean, we find that the democratic self-administration is the best way within the United Syria, within Syria, just like all the countries, I mean, Europe and everywhere, to have some kind of autonomous areas within the Syrian government and the Syrian state. That's all we are looking for.
And so how many Syrian Kurds actually live outside of your area in Syria? Like you said that we still don't have our rights. So presumably you're talking about the Syrian Kurds who live outside of your zone of influence. What kind of lives do they face in places like Damascus or Aleppo? And how many of them are there?
Well, we have too many. Maybe we can talk about more than 200 or 300,000 people, because there is no, I mean, number has accounted also in Damascus and in Homs areas and other areas. So we are everywhere in Syria. In our areas, we have about 3 million people, which they are Syrian. And our areas, which we are controlled now by the Democratic Syrian Forces, or protected by Democratic Syrian Forces, it's about more than 5 million. And
including
we have
many Arabs as well.
Yes, with the Arabs and with the Syrians.
Of course. But what I'm trying to say is that the Syrian Kurds who live outside your area still face the same restrictions that they did prior to 2011. And we've seen no sign of the regime making any kind of goodwill gesture, let's say, for example, allowing education in the Kurdish language broadcasting, organization of Kurdish political parties, as a confidence building measure that could maybe lay the ground for some kind of meaningful dialogue, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's not only the Kurdish people. When I say that, I mean their mentality has
of course,
not toward the Kurdish only, and towards all the Syrians. And maybe you can refer to the areas which retaken by the Syrian regime, like Daraa, Homs, and even Damascus. Still, the regime is doing the same as it was in 2011. Before that, they are still, I mean, maybe the intelligence services capturing people, detaining them, and pressuring, and everything is the same. Nothing has been changed. And it's the same for the Kurdish people over there. I mean, even maybe they had tried, our Kurdish people in Damascus, they tried to have some courses, special courses, I mean, for the Kurdish language, is prohibited by them, it's not allowed, you see?
Oh, I mean,
so
yeah.
Yeah, and there is no change in the mentality
No
at all.
change, no change. So here you are controlling this area and trying to establish a model of governance actually for the rest of Syria. But your security, you may be slightly offended at me for saying this, is very much dependent on the United States and on the fact that they continue to keep 800-900 troops on the ground, and that is really your main cover. How confident are you that these troops will always be there? How confident are you that the US will remain committed to your security? Or is it really, as they've always said all along, that it's only really about fighting the Islamic State, and once they're convinced that that threat's been, removed, that they'll just leave?
Well, actually, we never asked the United States and the international coalition for protecting us. We are depending on ourselves. That's right. And because we have a mutual, aim to fight against Daesh, to fight against those terrorists. And any attack to our areas or to our people, it means weakening our defense system, you see. This is all what we have, and maybe you remember what happened in 2019 when they withdrew from the other areas. And finally, I just in these days when there is a threats by Turkey, we can find, those sleeping cells of the Daesh and so, and giving away and destroying and killing the people. So, the coalition, when they are here, is not to protect us. It's just to keep us in power to fight against Daesh and those terrorists. That's all, Otherwise, we have still, potential for those groups to do and to organize themselves and so. So they are here. We never ask them to protect. They are not here for protecting us. What I mean, we have a mutual interest between two sides for the international coalition and for democratic Syrian forces. That's all. Because of that, United States is keeping the troops. And,
well, it's quite obvious that, they haven't done much to protect you. Certainly in October 2019, it was kind of the opposite when Donald Trump actually green-lighted that Turkish invasion. And they do seem to not say very much when Turkey continues to carry out these drone strikes, and often you see civilians losing their lives in those attacks. So I can understand how frustrated you feel. So when you, in your discussions with US officials, what exactly do they tell you about their commitment to you, to your democratic project, and your efforts to, win some democratic rights going forward? Are they engaged with you in those kinds of conversations, or is it just about Daesh, security, that sort of thing?
Well, we are talking about these points. I believe, maybe we are dealing with each other since maybe more than 7 years. And there is much mutual, trust between us. Maybe we can trust each other now because the Americans, where they are here, the troops, they can go to the village and talk to the people very freely. And the people, here, like those international coalition troops over there. So they are dealing with very friendly. And something else we are telling them, why those Turkish attacks in our areas and our people? You can just recognize, just a few days ago, they have killed some people from democratic Syrian forces and with the women forces. And those fighters, they were against Daesh. They were fighting together with the international coalition against Daesh. They had very good relations. They were in the same areas for fighting. And now they were attacked by Turkey. Why? Because we believe Turkey is taking the revenge of Daesh. You see, it's just killing those people because they were able to defeat Daesh. So this is the point. And we are telling them to understand that, I mean, those attacks in our areas, in our people, in our democratic Syrian forces, in YPG and YPJ, is just revenge of Daesh. Don't forget that those Daesh leaders, all of them, not only one, still we have a list about maybe tens of those Daesh leaders. They are in the area occupied by Turkey. And you remember two caliphates, they were killed on the border of Turkey. So
you mean the successors to Baghdadi, the ones who succeeded him, you're referring to?
Baghdadi and Quraishi and the others and the rest, and some of them, they were arrested, and still we have a long list of the names. They were emirs of Daesh, and they're living in this place.
We also know that a lot of Turkish people joined Daesh, correct?
That's right. And those are used in Turkey, in North Kurdistan against the Kurdish people over there. You remember, what happened in Ankara explosion and in Diyarbakir, in Suruç. So those are Daesh, which is working under the control of MIT. So this is very clear. Our partners here, the Americans, international coalition, if they really want Daesh to be finished, to be defeated forever, they should cut those supports to Daesh.
But Turkey will, of course, respond that their fight is against terrorists, and that the PKK is a terrorist organization, that the United States and the EU recognize it as such, and that these PKK people are inside northeast Syria, and that they are part of the administration, and that even though they may wear different uniforms and operate under a different name, but they're all PKK. What is your response to that?
Well, the Americans are with us. We are together discussing. They are in the troops. They are fighting together. They know us very well. They know that they are not connected to PKK, or they are not taking their orders from PKK, or whatever it is. They know our reality very well. It's just, I don't know why they are keeping silence for Turkey. We then know, it's excuse for Turkey. Those people are being killed. All of them are Syrians. All of them are Syrians.
But some of them did actually operate inside the PKK, but that was before, not today. And those people then went on to fight against the Islamic State. So actually, the broader question here really is, why does the PKK even exist? And that brings us to the heart of the matter, which is Turkey's failure to address its Kurdish question. Now, we remember the days, sorry to interrupt, when in fact Turkey was trying to fix that, and Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the president, was the first Turkish leader who allowed direct talks between the government and Abdullah Ocalan, the PKK leader who's in Imralı prison, and between PKK commanders. And you, in fact, during that period, at least when we had the second attempt at talks, used to meet with Turkish leaders. Isn't that so? Can you tell us a little bit about that period and how your relations were with Turkish officials? You would come and go to Istanbul, I believe. Some say Ankara. Maybe you can shed some more light, tell us stuff you haven't said before about those contacts.
Well, first of all, we should know, if we are saying PKK is just excuse, to blame everybody, every Kurdish people, they are looking for any rights, democratic rights for the Kurdish people. They became a terrorist in the eyes of Turkey, and they say they are PKK or connected to PKK or whatever it is. It's just accusation, nothing more than that. This is all. And they were dealing with the PKK. It was the right thing to do, because we believe, this Kurdish issue, which is led by the PKK, the Kurdish movement, freedom movement, or whatever, it should be solved in this way, by dialogue. Who is going to talk? it's not. It should be solved by dialogue. And this is that time in 2013, 2014, 15, there was a dialogue and everything was quiet. But after that, we understood that that period is just a kind of trick by Turkey. I mean, because they were preparing themselves for a big fight. I mean, building the facilities for fighting and collecting the power and getting ready to fight against the Kurdish people everywhere.
But could it not be that the government had, Erdogan was actually sincere, but that the security establishment was working against him and that they were somehow sabotaging him? I mean, we'll never know the real truth, but at least not in the near immediate future. But I would like to hear about your contacts, because this peace process was also about how Turkey would deal with the Syrian Kurds. Isn't that so? And you had contacts with Turkish officials, correct?
Well, yeah, that's right. I mean, our contact with the Turkish officials started in 2012 in Cairo, which was a Turkish ambassador over there. And then I was invited to Istanbul to meet some people from the foreign ministry. So we met over there.
Were they friendly? Were they nice to you?
Yes, we understood each other, and they were trying to connect us to the Muslim Brotherhood. I mean, the Syrian opposition, which was led by the Muslim Brotherhood. They wanted us to be under their umbrella, to listen to them, to be connected to them. At that time, we said, yes, we are opposition of Syria, and we can do what is needed, but for one condition. They should say or write, by writing, saying the Kurdish issue is, there is a Kurdish issue in Syria, and it should be solved in the democratic way. So this is the condition. If they put these conditions, we can connect to them and we can work together with them. But the opposition rejected. I don't know, maybe rejected by themselves, or just Turkey ordered them to reject this, demand. And then we when we reject, to accept that condition, to be connected to them without any condition. So at that time, we became a terrorist.
And there's even a warrant for your arrest by Turkey, and right. even a lot. How many $1 million would I get if I captured you and handed you over to Turkish authorities? I can't remember.
Yeah, actually,
I'd become a rich woman.
Yeah, which it was in Turkish lira. It's not.
Oh, it was, dear. Well, that's not worth very much anymore, is it?
It was 10 million.
They have to update that. They have, but yeah, Salih, it was a hopeful moment, wasn't it, in Turkey, when those talks were going on? And it's a real shame that all ended and that people are dying yet again. And I just want to tell our audience, because not many of you probably know, that Salih Bey was a student in Turkey. He studied engineering in Istanbul. He speaks fluent Turkish. He made many Turkish friends, and he really did help change the atmosphere in Turkey, and was a great ambassador for Rojava at the time. So why do you think we are where we are today? You follow Turkey very closely. Do you really think that, as you said, Erdogan was just playing a game, or did circumstances kind of also push him towards this path of renewed aggression?
Yes, I think so, because there were some conflict between them and maybe Fethullah Gulen stream, and they were enforced to get the help from some other parties inside Turkey, just like MHP and Erdogan and some other powers in Turkey, which is against the Kurdish issue and against the Kurdish the Kurdish solution, or so they hate the Kurdish people. They're refusing any Kurdish being in Turkey. So at that time, he changed his policy. It was in 2015, if I remember. Yeah, at that
Yeah.
time, they just became the enemy of everybody for the democratization, for the Kurdish people, the Kurdish rights, and whatever. Since his, collaboration with the MHP and those Ergenekon and the other, gangs in Turkey, and still it's continuing. This war. Maybe the collapse of Turkish economy is just because of this war, but nobody is talking about, because since 7 years, Turkey is in the war and spending huge amounts of money for this war. Can you imagine
And
every?
for the occupation of Syria, also it
Yeah,
must cost a lot of money, those areas that it's,
but
sitting in.
don't forget, still a war going in South Kurdistan since
You
4
mean,
years
yeah, in case some of our readers don't understand,
against the
Mr.
guerrillas.
Muslim is talking about Iraqi Kurdistan, yes.
Yeah, against guerrillas. Since it didn't stop, the war maybe just destroying everything. So, and even the Turkish economy is destroyed because of that war. Yeah.
And yet, one of the reasons Erdogan made this turn away from the peace process was because he reckoned that he was losing too many nationalist votes. Yet, as things currently stand, without Kurdish support, it's very difficult for anyone to be re-elected. So do you think that there's even the slightest chance that he may reverse course yet again and reach out to the Kurds, if only to save his own skin and to remain in power?
Well, one point should I mention, because the Kurdish issue in Turkey is the main issue since the beginning of establishment of the Turkish state till now. And because they couldn't solve it, it's spread around to Rojava, to South Kurdistan, to everywhere, to the world. And even for the democratization of Turkey, it's just because they don't want the Kurdish people to get any democratic rights. Because of that, they were not able to join the European Union and even discussions between them. So it's a problem, really. But can you imagine if the Kurdish people is solved in Turkey with a democratic way in the parliament or whatever it is, if it's solved, so I think all the Middle East will be in rest, really, because all the Turkish attacks and the Turkish atrocities everywhere is just because of this Kurdish issue is not solved in Turkey.
Have you met with Erdogan? Because there's a rumor that you actually personally met him, and let's set the record straight. You've never met Erdogan in person.
No, really, no. I couldn't meet. I wish to meet him, really, but of course, I think he wouldn't accept it.
Well, he might have at one point, perhaps. But just one last thing. You mentioned Iraqi Kurdistan, and we all know that the Americans tried very hard to sort of make you and the opposition, the Syrian Kurdish opposition, sit down and sort of sign an agreement that would have allowed for them to share power with you and eventually hold elections, etc. Why do you think that whole exercise failed? And to what extent do you think Iraqi Kurds, or even the KDP, shall I say, were instrumental in that process? Why did it all not work out?
Well, if I say, maybe you will say you are exaggerating things, really.
I may.
Yeah, but everything is from Turkey, really, because we were saying, for those the Kurdish people and Syrian Kurdish people meeting, and so with the mediation of the United States and Mr. Muslim, which is Democratic Syrian Forces commander, and so. And really, we wish to do something, but the problem is they are connected to Turkey. Some people there, they were sitting in Istanbul or Ankara, they are rejecting. Such anything to any, any closeness between the Kurdish people, and even for the Iraqi Kurds and the Rojava Kurds, and so Turkey is not accepting any the Kurds to become together, to work together. So because of that, they are doing all their efforts, and so just to let the Kurds very spread everywhere and not to be together and not to be united. And this problem, really, we are suffering it not from now, from 2012, when we started to make some agreements, Hawler agreement, and then Duhok agreement with the Kurdish people to come together. Everything was, just let's say, sabotaged by Turkey, really. Because at that time, maybe one time, Davutoğlu will come and say what he has done. He was meetings with them saying, well, it's not accepted, you shouldn't do anything with the PYD. So that's all.
This is the former foreign minister, former Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoğlu.
That's right, yes. Mm-hmm. And he's still, maybe now is not Davutoğlu, but the others is still doing the same. For the Kurdish people and the conflict between us and the Barzanis and the South Kurdistan. So the problem is, the source of the problems is Turkey, really.
Well, if you had a message first of all, for President Erdogan, and second, for Prime Minister Masroor Barzani, what would that message be?
Well, I say you wouldn't be, you wouldn't be maybe in peace till you solve the Kurdish problem. The Kurdish problem is the main problem, not only for South Kurdistan or for Turkey, or it's a problem for Middle East. And the key of solving this problem is in the hands of Turkey. If they solve it, everything will be okay, I think.
And from Prime Minister Masroor Barzani, what would you have to say to him?
Well, I think what I say, he should think of his people, not, just because of Turkey, they shouldn't, be away from his Kurdish nation and Kurdish people. He should respect the Kurdish people and even the blood of those martyrs killed for protecting the Kurdish people.
Well, Salih Muslim, it was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so very much for joining us today. And let's hope that peace will prevail and that there won't be any more attacks. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
You.
I'm Elizabeth Hagedorn, and I'm the State Department correspondent at Al Monitor.
And I'm Joe Snell. I'm Al Monitor's video editor. Let's admit it, this past year has been difficult to stay on top of the news and sift through what's accurate and what's misleading. Let Al Monitor help you.
If you care about the Middle East and North Africa, you should consider listening to Al Monitor's audio series On the Middle East with Andrew Parasalidi and Amberin Zaman, and On Israel with Ben Caspi. You can now watch our newest video podcast, Reading the Middle East with Gilles Capel. You can subscribe to these series on your favorite podcast platforms.
And through a host of free daily and weekly newsletters, we offer a range of perspectives with the highest journalistic standards. You can subscribe to these newsletters at almonitor.com.
As an award-winning media service headquartered in Washington, D.C., Al Monitor has a network of over 160 contributors around the world.
So if you haven't done so already, be sure to visit almonitor.com, where you can find all of these newsletters and podcasts along with first-class reporting and analysis.
And this brings us to the end of this week's podcast. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and tune in again next week. Thank you for listening and goodbye.